Welcome, guys, to another episode of Mac Yak. We are trying something a little bit different here, so hopefully it's working. I don't know, it's dropping a lot of frames here, so I'm not sure how well the stream is going to be tonight. I'm not sure if it's my... I don't think it's my computer because
it's never your computer.
I've got plenty of.
It's never your
More freaking computing power than that. More freaking computing power than that.
That's probably true right now. Yeah.
I think the music is still. I think the music is still playing. I hear music on YouTube. I hear music on YouTube.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I do too.
It's very loud.
Yeah, I do.
It's very loud.
Oh yeah,
not me.
Yeah, the music is playing.
Yeah,
the music is playing.
Also, you're not crazy buffering. You're not buffering. Yeah, buffering. No. I think it's you.
I'm dropping a lot of.
I think it's you. I don't even hear audio. They don't even hear us talking or nothing.
I don't even have that up as the live. That's what's weird. I don't even have that up as. All right, guys. I don't know what the hell's going on here.
Obvious. I fixed it.
Skype.
Obvious.
I'm
thinking you're right. Either that or it's just Wirecast I mean, I haven't updated. What's the latest?
Oh,
version of
now
Wirecast, Jay?
we can hear. Oh, now we can hear ourselves. Music stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's.
I think it's
actually
cycling the track. I think it's cycling the track.
People that are wild, use OBS.
And our audio is that music
Should
is
be. The
loud.
audio is.
That music is
The
loud.
audio is like really loud. I mean, I'm watching the bar slider. Anyways, guys, welcome to another episode of Mac Yak. Even though we're having some technical problems here, we're trying something new. We're actually trying to use something other than FaceTime, so you guys don't see us bouncing around all over the place. So hopefully this is working a little bit better. I'm getting a thing saying excellent connection on my dashboard.
It is definitely
lies.
excellent.
It lies.
That's what YouTube's saying. Now it's saying your YouTube is not receiving.
Yeah,
video.
nobody can hear us. Yeah, nobody.
Now we have echoing loop going on. Poodles.
All right, guys. I think we got things straightened out here. Except now, hold on. Let me fix.
That lasted 5 seconds.
Well, no, it's working. It's just that the.
There we are. We see Rocky's
the
folded laundry.
What? Hey. Don't
Hold
dog
on,
my
I gotta-
laundry.
You got
Wait,
some
why am I getting
folded
called?
over things.
I was
Yeah.
getting a phone call. That was weird. Oh, yeah, that's just piles of stuff that I
I
forgot
still
to
see
cover
the
up this
loading
time.
bar, by the way.
I don't.
I know. No, you don't.
Yeah, I do.
You're delayed.
Yeah.
We're all floating around, but we're zoomed in.
Oh, there we are. I see myself. Hey, everybody. Again.
All right, there we go. That should be a lot better there. That's what happens when you have to redo everything from scratch. It takes me.
Hey.
Did we get Ben in here now or not?
He was calling, I think, just a second ago.
All right, let me try adding him by this. Hold on.
Awkward silence.
Hold on.
Yep.
Keep my fingers crossed.
Oh, no. Now we
According
have
to
to
this,
restart
it
the call.
says it doesn't have FaceTime on there.
No,
Yeah,
if
we
I
have,
stay very still, it doesn't look like I've frozen up, right?
No, it doesn't.
You're
Hold
froze. You're froze.
Oh, there it is. It's his phone
No.
number.
Oh,
Okay.
no, I thought you were froze. Damn it.
So we have a guest tonight to talk
He's
about
elusive.
the first topic, Linux on Mac, and we had him on Skype, We're having some issues getting him on FaceTime.
There.
Yes.
There we
Hey,
go.
go.
Finally.
You're welcome. I figured it out.
Finally.
Guys,
What did you figure
on
out?
my Mac Pro.
I copied his information out of the text chat that he was in for this exact call, and then I pasted it into the call as adding a person.
Ah,
All
okay.
right.
Fancy you.
All right, guys. Tonight
It works.
is starting off rough. 20 minutes in already, and we haven't even got to our first topic yet. So let's go ahead.
And now we're out of time. I gotta go. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump into our first topic right away. Linux BSD on a Power PC and Linux BSD on an Intel.
Maybe you want to introduce our guest?
Oh, yeah, that might work too. I'm flustered right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Ben, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. I am Ben Fitzpatrick, the newcomer to the show. I've been in the chat a couple times, and I actually offered to help these guys out with a Linux segment on Linux on Mac and, things like that. So here I am.
Yeah, and we made another viewer. His name is Dana. We made him actually wait for like 7 months before he could be on the show, and you're new, and here you are. So he's got to be pissed.
Cool. I got him beat. Well, so what do you guys want to know about Linux on a Mac?
Well,
Everything.
I read about it on the Facebook groups like Low End Mac. It's not a very popular topic on Mac Pro Upgrade in those groups, but
Oh no, it's not.
I want to know. I have zero experience with this. If I'm gonna install Linux on my Mac, first of all, why would I want to? And second of all, what is the best distro out there? Because there's like 80 of them.
Okay, those are two very good questions, Jay. The reason somebody would want to do it is to say like they got an older Mac, or they just want to try something different than Mac OS, and like they're burned out, or they just want to experience Linux, and they don't have the money to shell out a spare machine, whatever. I would recommend, first, sorry for that bong noise, but like I said, if they don't have the money to do it on a different computer or whatever, I would recommend getting something Ubuntu based if you don't know what you're doing, like Kubuntu. I would not recommend stock Ubuntu because they run GNOME, but if you don't like KDE, I would recommend Mate or XFCE.
And what is KDE and GNOME for people that don't know?
KDE is what I'm running right now on my Mac, and it works fine, but it's a Qt, which is the development behind KDE, but KDE...
It's the graphical user interface on the...
That's the answer I was
on
looking
the
for.
operating system, yes. It's the graphical interface, yeah. It's one of many, actually. And the one that Ubuntu ships with is called GNOME, but it requires a lot of work to set up because you have to add these things called extensions onto it to make it actually have usable. So, I mean, it comes usable out of the box, but it's not really noob-friendly out of the box. So, if you're technical enough, you can get it to work, but you'd have to go hunting a bunch of websites and a bunch of YouTube videos to figure it out. So you're better off going with another desktop like KDE, XFCE, Mate, or something like that.
So unlike a Mac, you could actually change the user interface elements to the foundation level on Linux.
Yeah, you can do that really easily, and all you'd have to do is one simple command in the terminal, which is sudo space apt space purge space GNOME star. But here's the problem. If you do that and you don't add another GUI on top of it, you are going to break your install and have to start all the heck over again. So, yeah. So if you don't know what you're doing, don't do that.
Well, I definitely don't know what I'm doing.
So I recommend not changing the desktop unless you know what the F you're doing. Just
So,
5%.
For someone like me who doesn't know what he's doing, and macOS is running fine for the most part, why should I still?
I would, if you're gonna try it, make a backup, a lot of them, and then go for it.
All right. And can I have, Photoshop, Dreamweaver, usual apps on there?
You can have Photoshop, but it's probably not going to work so well under Wine. And what Wine is, it's a Windows emulation software, or a Windows program loader, I should say. But here's the thing: running those kinds of things on Linux it ain't going to work too good.
They do have their own variants in Linux, though.
Yeah, like GIMP. There are video editors on there that you can use, like OpenShot, Kdenlive, but they may not be as good as the Mac and Windows equivalents because they're just not as high tier as their counterparts. But they can still get a pretty decent job done.
Now, what is the advantage to running Linux on a PowerPC? Is it really that much faster than macOS 10?
I would say it is, yes. I personally have ran and heard of people running Mac on a PowerPC. I don't have a PowerPC to test it on right now, but I have tested it on other people's PowerPC machines, and they haven't had any problems, and I've heard lots of great feedback on that, so I would say yes.
All right.
Which alludes to one of the other great advantages of running Linux. Let's say you have a older Mac that does not run a modern distro that's still, or version, of Mac OS that is not supported anymore. You can actually run Linux and have a current web browser, current software, stuff like that. Yes. That is one of the advantages.
Yes, and you can actually, and again, this is why Linux is so pro-choice, is because, it runs on most any hardware. Like, for example, the only downside is, say, like you do one of those Mac Pro upgrades, like the graphics card, the etc. You will not be able to install Linux on a machine like that because you don't get the boot screen unless you use a pre-flashed card. So yeah, that's the only caveat about it.
There's other ways around that too, like just removing all the hard drives except for the one you're going to load it on and have that hard drive already pre-blank.
Exactly. And you might be better off booting it off a CD or a DVD in that case because it's more tricky to do it that way.
So would you suggest for a first-time user who has no idea about Linux but they're curious, would you suggest they take a live CD or a live USB, just boot it up, and could you talk about the advantages of that setup?
Well, what I would say to do is if you want to try it, like I said, definitely back up your stuff first to whatever you can, like a cloud storage or a portable drive, something like that, or a separate internal, whatever. And then if you're doing it to a separate internal, unplug every drive you don't want to lose your stuff on. That's one thing I'm going to recommend. And then two, to answer your question, I would recommend burning it to a USB using, there is a Mac-specific tool out there. I can't remember it for the life of me right now. But the easiest thing to do would be get unit booting. If that doesn't work, I'll look up the tool after the show and give it to Greg to put in the link down below for those who want to try this, if they do. And I would recommend unit booting. Just simple search, you'll find it. But get the Mac version and whatever distro you want to go with. For something for new people, I would recommend Xubuntu or Ubuntu Mate. Now, Ubuntu Mate has a slightly, or maybe a more easier GUI to work with than XFCE, because XFCE, in my opinion, the default looks like something out of Windows 95. Oh, Jesus. iMessage is going off like a rocket right now.
That's why we have Do Not Disturb.
I gotta turn that on.
Now, I would change the recommendations just a little bit from my experience. Yes, I agree. Going with a Kubuntu, Lubuntu, the
Yeah,
Mate,
KDE
they
or
will.
LXDE. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would say okay. That's a great start. There's other options too because there are limitations and caveats to running the Ubuntu-based. Debian isn't a bad choice for a live. I would recommend definitely for a new person, give it a live install trial. You can actually do a setup and install to where you can actually run the whole thing off of a USB and it be a very efficient live boot. I would try things like there's Pop OS. There's also um,
It really all
Haiku
comes. What he's trying to
and
say is it
Mandriva.
really comes down to what you want, basically.
Yeah, and you got to give them all a try. There's many different variants that are good to try as a new user.
Yeah, Mint is also another good option, but the GUI and everything comes down to user preference. So yeah, you just got to play around with it, see what suits you best, see where it ends up.
And Jake has a good point here. He says, don't forget testing through virtualization. You can
Yes,
set up a
that.
virtual machine and test different flavors of Linux to see what's what.
Yes,
Yeah,
but there are caveats to that too.
yeah. You don't really get the full experience doing it in a VM. So honestly, you can do that, but it might be a better thing to do it on a real install versus doing it on a virtual machine.
Yes, because you won't be able to. The biggest thing about doing it on a virtual machine is you're not going to find out if everything about that distro is compatible and going to function properly on your system.
Exactly. That is another good point there, is that you are not going to know what your machine is really capable of, and you're not going to know if it runs well, etc. So I would recommend throwing it on a real partition, real hard drive, whatever. And if you don't absolutely want to run away from Mac or delete it, whatever, then you're probably best doing a dual boot. But the only downside is the Linux bootloader is going to take over the Mac bootloader anyway. So you're probably better off just going and wiping the drive and then keeping a backup of Mac if you want to go back. So, yeah. That's just my 2 cents. So yeah, that's what I would do.
All right.
So, any other questions on Linux or?
Well, I saw Lubuntu mentioned a few
Well,
times in the chat, and Debian,
Yeah.
and I think Nick showed me this once. The Elementary OS is a
Yeah,
version of Linux that
elementary
looks a
is
lot like Mac OS.
yeah, it is based around a Mac premise, and it's built to look like that. But a lot of my Linux friends that I've talked to have had lots of problems with it.
Huh? Like what?
Well, they've told me it's buggy and it doesn't really work that good. But if you want to try it, you're more than welcome to. I'm just
which
giving you a little heads up.
All right.
which one's buggy?
Elementary,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, if it works.
Like, okay, should we have audio back now?
Let's
I
let me
didn't
check
touch
the.
anything. It's all of a sudden it just like poof.
Yeah. Things
No
are
audio
not
yet on
going
the
well
stream.
tonight.
Wirecast hates Greg tonight.
I'm
Nick,
about
yes,
ready to
what's
throw
enough?
Wirecast out the window, and because to be honest with you, I think this is the problem: is Wirecast.
Dude, I use OBS. I never have a problem.
That's
I use
why I'm thinking about going back to OBS because I think.
OBS is a little sluggish on macOS, though.
All right, audio
Yeah,
on the stream is
but
back.
All right.
but at least it's stable and
And
doesn't
we,
you.
drop.
for the record, we have no idea why the audio went away. We didn't touch anything. We didn't do anything. It just stopped working on its own.
Yeah,
Oh god.
I
it's
uncrossed my fingers. I'm sorry.
it's this stupid Linux topic that we've had on for the last 3 weeks. It's the
I don't
curse.
know if it's that or
It's a
what.
curse. I'm telling you, and it's Grudy not being on. We blame him.
Hey, I
His
just
internet.
offered to be on the show. I didn't cause this.
No, it's not you. We've had this topic on for about 3 weeks now, and we've been pushing it off because Grudy hasn't been on. We wanted him on it because he wanted to talk about it. So now,
My points don't get thrown out the window.
We'll just do it a fourth week.
Oh,
No, I will never talk about Linux again because.
More stable.
Whoa!
you're a funny
Here's
man. All
Elisa.
right, so
I'm kidding,
let's.
Greg.
You got a
All right,
big mouse, man, and
so
you
we're
got a
back
12
live
core.
again. We're back live. So we'll see
I
how this
think we
goes
got all
now.
the Linux points covered at this point.
All right. So, should we go on to our next topic and hopefully that this thing stays stable enough?
Yes, please. And
Yeah,
thank you,
please. Oh
thank you,
my
Ben, for
god.
helping us out with the
No
subject
problem.
matter.
Shall I go ahead and drop off or?
No, you can stay
Now
on
you
if you
can
want.
hang out if you
Yeah,
want.
I'll stay
It's up
on.
to you.
Yeah, I'll stay. Yeah, but I'm gonna mute so that way I don't go chomping your ears because I'm hungry as hell.
Good idea.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. So, our next topic tonight is delidding. I think all of us, well, especially the two that I know have delidded so far on here is me and Jay. And my preferred method, there's a couple of different.
Wait. What is delidding? Please explain.
Delidding is basically taking the heat spreader off of a CPU so that you can actually put the heat sink directly to the CPU die. A lot of people also delid to put like liquid metal on or better paste on the CPU die, and then they relid it. So in other words, they put the lid back on and they put seal. They seal it back up again. And everything. So a lot of people do that.
And this is
Which,
for the Mac Pro, correct?
well, this is for any. You can use it for anything. This is PC, Mac, whatever.
It
But
even applies to graphics cards.
yes, but you have to do this if you want to do it correctly for the Mac Pro 4,1 dual processor.
2009.
Yeah, well, the dual processor tray, not the single. The single processor tray actually has lidded CPUs, which is weird, but the dual processor tray has delidded CPUs. So you have to actually delid the CPUs in order for the heat sinks to actually mate properly. And so some people, what they do is they'll put lidded CPUs in a 4,1 and they'll put washers underneath where the standoffs are. And the problem with that though is guess what you have to do, because on the edge of the heatsink it actually touches some of the chips that keep some of the memory chips, I guess, or cache chips cool, as well as the fan connector will not actually connect down into it. You have to actually break the plastic to get it to connect in because it's too high up. So it
And
doesn't make
just a little visual, because there might be people that don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, that is a lidded CPU.
This is a Xeon processor. This internal heat spreader is what we call the lid.
Yes.
And we're talking about the process of removing this
Yes.
so that you're working straight with the CPU
fat.
and the bare die.
Yep. And because the 4,1 does not have retention clips or anything like that, you technically should not be putting a lidded CPU in them. I mean, a lot of people say they work fine. To be honest with you, my personal preference is I'd rather have it delidded. Okay, that's just me. Now,
Well,
go ahead,
go ahead.
Jay. No.
And I'm gonna walk outside. It's getting really hot in my office. What was I gonna say? Oh, right. There's cases to be made for both lidded and delidded, and we're all talking about the 2009, like Greg said, the 2009 4,1 dual CPU model. That's the
Yes.
only one that needs that has from the factory delidded CPUs.
Yes.
Every other Mac Pro has lidded CPUs, and if you put delidded CPUs in there, it just won't work. There's going to be too much space between the CPU die and the heatsink, and it's not going to work.
In fact, here is a factory CPU for a 4,1. You notice how shiny it is because this one has actually never been lidded in its life.
Pretty.
So it doesn't have the marking around the side where the glue held the heat spreader on or anything like that. So, I mean, it's really, really shiny, but basically that is and I think this is a 25, I want to say. No, it's a 5620. Yeah, it's a 5620 CPU. So I'm running 5675, and I think Jay's running the same thing in his, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So when you get the new CPUs, a lot of them, if you want to get them cheaper, you want to get them lidded. Because some people charge an arm and a leg to delid them before they'll send them to you.
Yes, it could be a difference of, I've seen as much as $50 per chip, just because they took the lid off.
Yes. Okay. Only the 4,5. No, that's not correct, Londo. The 5,1 dual processor models has lidded CPUs.
Yep.
Want me to check?
Huh?
Stop
No.
showing off. Come on.
No.
While it's on.
That's incorrect, Londo. The 5,1 has lidded CPUs.
Yeah, the 4,1 2009 is the only one that mixes it.
Well,
Single CPU has lidded.
The dual tray,
has delidded. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, anyways, the reason why we came up with this subject is because I actually made a video on this and I posted it on my channel. So, if you guys want to take a look at that, you can. But I prefer the razor blade and heat gun method. There's a couple different methods. One is called the vice method, and one's called the heat gun method, or the razor blade method.
Right, and I'll explain the vice method, and then you could do the razor method.
Yeah. Okay. To be honest with you, I think the vice method, and I'm gonna let Jay reason why. I'll let him talk about it. I don't like it because to me it's got a lot more problems or cons versus pros. But the heat gun / razor blade method is actually the most safest way to do it.
Yep.
Simple fact is what you do is you're cutting the glue around the CPU. And now this is basically for CPUs that are soldered to the heat spreader is actually soldered to the CPU die. There are some Intel CPUs. I don't think the Xeons actually are all soldered, but I think there's some Intel ones like i7s and i9s that are not soldered. They're actually got paste on them, believe it or not. I've seen those before.
Yeah.
But anyways, you cut the rubber with the razor blades, and you take the 4 razor blades, you put them in there, and like I said, just go watch my Londo, I'll kill myself now. But basically, you put the razor blades in there to provide pressure on the CPU. Then you heat up with a heat gun. I have a SMC workstation, which works perfect for this. You heat up this heat spreader while having the razor blades or the CPU being held by the razor blades. Okay. So what happens is when you heat it up enough, you're going to hear it pop. As soon as it pops, you take the heat off, and it'll basically the CPU will fall off of the spreader or the heat spreader, and you have a delidded CPU. Then you actually have to go in and you have to take that rest of the solder off of the CPU by basically scraping it off. The solder is so soft, it's way softer than rosin core or tin or leaded solder and whatnot. So, or what's the other one? The tin alloy solder.
Yeah,
Rosin
I know.
core, or
I think
what are
it
you
is.
talking about?
No, it's I'm just thinking tin alloy and or leaded solder. But this solder is actually softer than both of those. Okay, so you can basically scrape it with the razor blade off of the CPU die. And once you get it scraped off and get the CPU die buffed out a little bit, boom, you have a delidded CPU.
Yep.
So Jay's going to explain the vice method here.
Yes, and after I do that, I have a few comments on the razor blade method as well. That's
Okay.
all right. Unless at this point someone else wants to interject something. No? Okay. I think Mike fell asleep, by the way. Where's Mike?
I'm still here.
Oh, there he is. Hey, Mike.
I'm learning.
Okay. So the vice method, that's actually the first... Really? Fix your exhaust. The vice method is the first time I saw a Harley. Really? I start talking and the Harley's like, come on. Anyway, the vice method is the first time I saw a chip delidded. And at the time it made perfect sense to me. So what you do is you put the chip on one side of the vise and the lid edge on the other side of the vise, and then you just close it until the lid pops off. And it's easy, it's fast, and that's the way a lot of people do it. Once the lid is off, you're still stuck with a little bit of solder on the chip that you have to scrape off, and then you're pretty much at the same point you would be with the razor blade method. The problem is, and this has been demonstrated a few times already if you go online and search for it, by using the vice method, and you don't have to use a traditional vice, by the way. They make little handheld things now where you put the chip in, you tighten the screw, and it pops the heat spreader off to make it a little bit more convenient. But it's the same technique, really. By doing that, you put an insane amount of pressure on the CPU die. Because that solder, even though it's soft, it's really on there. It does a good job of connecting the heat spreader to the CPU die. And by basically sliding that heat spreader off to one side, you're pulling on the solder, which pulls on the CPU die. And a lot of the times it goes off without a hitch. But there's also quite a few times where the CPU die will just stick to the solder, and you pull your CPU in half, and you're just looking straight down the chip.
Well, remember, the die is made of silicon, which is basically glass.
Yeah, it crumbles, and I don't know. We have pictures, but I don't know if you got them ready to overlay on the screen.
No, I'm having issues with Wirecast. I really don't want to.
Oh yeah. Don't touch it. Never mind.
Yeah.
Would it be
even if it goes,
then,
go ahead.
I was going to ask, would it be possible then to mix the two methods? Because it sounds like the vice method might be very
No.
nice for
No,
an easy
the razor
Why would
to
you?
use the heat.
Why
the
would
razor
you?
blades
you
don't help
mix
you
the
with.
Heat gun
Rocky, you're breaking up.
to melt the solder and then use the vice to. Sorry. It should be better now. Am I better?
You're technically not really melting the solder. You're just softening it enough so the pressure pulls it away from the lid. Okay, because
but could you use the heat gun with the vice method so that way you would?
I wouldn't. Why do that?
Separating
Because
the silicone with it.
I'll touch on that.
Okay.
But if it does go off without a hitch, and like, oh, pretty, my CPU is still in one piece, you don't really know if you caused any damage, because you're talking about microscopic fractures in the CPU die or in the substrate that it's attached to, or stuff you can't see. You're risking by putting that much pressure on the CPU die. So that's why I don't prefer the vice method. It's just a lot more risk. And if you just spend $140 on a pair of what is it, 6590s, are they the highest end for the Mac Pro?
Yeah,
and you're going to be sad when you snap those in half.
Especially since those right now are running about probably $200 for a pair.
Oh yeah. So you could heat the. I've never seen it done, but theoretically, you could heat the solder and then use the vice method. But that solder cools so quickly you would have to do the vice method while you have someone else apply the heat gun to it.
Yes.
So it would definitely be a two-man job, or you have some kind of stand for it. You will burn your hands in the process too. But also,
I would not mix and match
there's a lot of heat because you have to keep the heat gun on there for a good, I'd say at least 30 to 45 seconds, depending on the temperature. And there's some capacitors around the CPU die as well. Those are soldered on, and that solder weakens as well as you apply the heat. So if you slide that heat spreader off and you hit one or more of those caps, you're going to knock them off really easy.
Yep.
So it's still a big risk in my
opinion.
Now,
Jay, speaking of that, going back to the razor blade method, that's another kind of drawback, and you have to watch it the way you apply heat to the CPU lid, because on the bottom of the CPU, if you look on the bottom, okay, of this one especially, you see all those capacitors on there. Okay, those can actually fall off, and I've read stories where people say that the heat method where those will fall off on the bottom. I have yet to have any problems delidding. I've delidded 5 CPUs so far. That's my experience right there. But I have not yet had one capacitor fall off because of the heat. If you do it correctly and only apply the heat to the very middle of the spreader, then you won't have any problems. It's when you start moving the gun around, the heat all around. But just remember, it's only attached to the middle of the spreader, so you only have to heat up the middle.
Yeah.
And that heat spreader is spreading that heat out because it's going to take a lot of heat. Because remember, that heat spreader is there for a reason. It's to take heat off of the CPU die.
Yeah, and as we're talking about this, I'll probably do a video about it because there's a lot of information here.
Yeah.
And a lot of don't do this, do that, and
But if you guys go to my channel, I do have a video on there where I did do a video on delidding CPUs using the razor blade method. So
now I have a few notes. I've seen who just left? Oh, Rocky did.
Rocky did, yeah.
I've seen it done a few ways. Some people put the chip upside down, like they put it in some kind of holder or on a roll of tape, and they heat the bottom. So they point the heat gun up, heat the bottom, and then the heat sink or the heat spreader will fall down, and the chip will just lay there.
I kind of don't.
It's an option, but
the only
if that heat spreader lands on your lap, you're screwed.
Well, here's another thing too. You got to remember the physics of heat. Heat rises, so basically that heat's going up to the top of the chip, and you got all, like I said again, if you're upside down, guess what's on the bottom that's going to get heated up?
Yeah, but the bottom of the chip would be pointed up in this scenario.
That's what I'm talking about. This would be pointed up, but you could also, all it takes is a little bit of movement on any of those capacitors, and guess what? That chip is pretty much useless.
And then there's the method where people use a roll of tape, and the CPU will just lay, face up, and you heat it from the top, and as the solder pops off, the chip, the razor blades, and the heat spreader just fall down to the middle of the roll of tape.
And that's what I did.
I'm not a fan of that scenario either, because that heat spreader is heavy. It's 90% of the weight of the CPU is the heat spreader. And as you're heating up that whole chip and everything on it, the solder of the rest of the components, all those capacitors and stuff, is soft as well. It doesn't fully harden in the split second it takes it to be here and fall to the bottom. So if that chip falls down, heat spreader lands along with 4 razor blades in the wrong way, you could also knock a cap off your CPU. So
possibility. But
my preferred method is to have a pair of helping hands hold the CPU and the razor blades. The CPU will fall down on a soft surface like a silicon heat mat or something.
That's rolled
and the razor
up, kind of wavy.
And the heat spreader will just hang there until it all cools off. That's my preferred method. But there's multiple ways to do it. I would say the vice method should definitely not be one of them.
Yes, I do not recommend the vice method. I've seen some pictures where you just look at those poor CPUs and it's like, ouch.
Yeah.
And you don't want to use too much heat because there's some people that actually have used it, and all of a sudden on the back, especially on the actual PC board, you'll see it start bubbling.
Oh yes, that was the third scenario I was going to
Yeah.
mention. Give me a break, people.
Yeah, you don't want to put a lot of heat on there. Use the
You always want to
minimal.
apply the heat to the heat spreader.
Yes.
You don't want to apply it to the bottom with the gold traces and a buttload of capacitors. That doesn't make sense.
Yep.
So
I agree.
And okay, so that's delidding. 2 ways to do it. Which one is right or for you is up to you. But once it's delidded, what do we do then? Because some people delid even for the 4,1 2009, where you might not have to delid, because there's also a popular method that uses spacers.
Yeah.
So you can put lidded CPUs in your dual tray 4,1 2009, but then you have to rise up your heat sinks a little with the use of spacers.
And that means that also on the edge where the heat sink is actually touching some of the components on the board to pull the heat off of them, you have to add thicker heat transfer.
Thermal pads.
Yeah, thermal pads. I was trying to think of the word there. Thermal pads to actually touch it. Now, the thicker the thermal pads are, the less the heat conductivity to the actual heat sink, in my opinion.
Yes.
So,
yes. And you have to break the fan connector on your heatsink because it doesn't sit in the socket properly anymore.
Exactly.
So if you're hesitant about delidding, which again you only need to do for one specific Mac Pro, and that's the dual tray 4,1 2009.
Mm-hmm.
If you're hesitant about that and you want to go with lidded CPUs, you can use spacers. You can use thermal pads to make up for the difference in thickness for the CPU. But there is a good chance that your CPU might run, or not the CPU, the components around it will run a little bit hotter.
Well, actually, I would probably say that the CPUs might run a little hotter too. Because you got to think of this now. When you're running it, like in my configuration, I'm running it straight from the CPU die straight to the heatsink. There's nothing in between the two except for some Arctic MX4. Okay. If you have the spreader in there, that spreader is actually pretty thick. It's about a millimeter or two thick. I mean, it's not thin.
Yeah.
It's not thin. So now you've got heat coming from the die, going to a heat spreader, going to a heat sink. So now you have a middleman, might want to say, in the heat transfer process. So
yes, but if you compare it to a 5,1, you're running the same thermal setup for the CPUs. So compare, if you put lidded chips in a 4,1, you're running the same setup as a 5,1. So the CPUs should probably run the same temperature as they would in a 2010 or 2012.
you would think so. They might run a little hotter. You never know. I mean,
But
right now, when I'm at idle on my 4,1, it's running at about, between 29 to 31 degrees Celsius. Okay. That's what my CPU's idle at. Right now, with me broadcasting and doing FaceTime and everything, the highest CPU is 38 degrees Celsius.
Man, I don't even get 38 on idle. Not even on a good day.
So you're running a little hotter, see?
Yes. But the problem is, if you put lidded chips in a 4,1, let's say they run the same temperature as a 5,1, you can monitor the temperature of the CPU. There's apps for that can do it. You cannot monitor the components around it, which you now have to put extra thermal padding on so they can reach the heatsink. So you're talking about coils, capacitors. You can't monitor those.
Yep.
So I would still urge anyone to delid or find someone to do it for you, because it's just less risk that way.
Especially on a 4.1 dual tray.
Yep.
All right, guys. Any more questions on this before we go to our next topic? We're kind of going to go into this next one because it kind of has to do with this, what we were just talking about. Any questions? Good. We'll go to the next one. Let me get the. All right. So our next topic is the Pixlas mod. Is it really needed? Jay and I have been discussing this for about a week now.
Yep.
Because it keeps coming up every now and then. We have the group that says, "Oh, you don't need a Pixlas mod. You can run any video card in your Mac Pro off of the two mini 6 pins, on the actual backplane." Then there's the group like me and Jay are in, where we think that it's safer to use a Pixlas mod in order to provide power to these power hungry GPUs now. So we've been doing a little bit of testing the last few days, and it kind of changed our mind a little bit, but I'm still going to be in the camp of doing the Pixlas mod. What about you, Jay?
Yeah, the two, and I'm going to write a detailed blog article on this because it's a lot of information to take in. But the two reasons why people, me included, up until now, recommend the Pixlas mod is because, one, the 6-pin port can only provide 75 watts of power. When you look into the specs of the port, and you can pull up the data sheets, and it can just do way more than 75 watts, according to the raw data sheets. Traditionally, the 6-pin port only has two 12-volt lines. The Mac Pro uses 3. So that's 12 volts times 8 or 9 amps. That's still up in the air. That's 90 plus watts on a single pin that you already gain on that connector.
Mm-hmm.
So the 75 watt limit is just, it's just bogus. It's not a real thing. And that's what people have always told me. And I've just been perpetuating that information, but there's no proof of it.
Well, there's a lot of people I've been seeing saying that if you take a 6-pin to 8-pin converter cable, it magically converts it to 150 watts on that one. And I'm like, how?
It turns out it can actually pull up to 280 watts according to the data sheet.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve. I think Steve's wanting to say something.
We can.
Steve, I was just saying.
Oh.
Huh?
Oh, now you got audio. Okay.
Oh, all right. I was just saying that, it's magic. 6-pin to 8-pin just magically gives you more power.
Don't underestimate Apple's design and manufacturing process involves a lot of magic. It's true.
Yeah. Now, Dan in the chat here says it's needed. My computer will power off on an R9 280 when it hits 100% in some games.
Okay, but what equals 100%? How many?
Yeah, I mean, what are we talking there, Dan? I mean, because now the test that Jay and I actually got my power supply up to 500. I think the most I had was about 550 watts, roughly, is what my power supply went up to.
You got up to 560.
560, okay. 560. The power supply is rated at 950, I think is what you said it was, right?
980 according to the sticker, but the 12-volt lines, you're talking about 950.
Yeah. So we're still well underneath, what that power supply can put out. I mean, and I'm running, I'm only running a 7970 in here. So it's not really that big of a card, and it's not that power hungry of a card.
Yeah.
But
no, I don't run a card nearly powerful. The only real way to test it is if you have a Titan in there or something ridiculous, but I don't have a card that powerful. Yeah. But there are people that have demonstrated by now that they can pull up to 210 watts of a single mini 6-pin port before triggering shutdowns. So that alone proves that 75 is just a made-up limit, or a limit that only applies to 2-pin or two 12-volt lines on other systems. It definitely does not apply to the Mac Pro.
Yeah.
The second piece of information that the Pixlas Mod is based on or recommended for is that the traces in the Mac Pro logic board are too thin to supply more than 75 watts of power. So I took a Mac Pro apart. I took the board out and I measured the traces on the front and
But
the
you can
back.
only see the grounds, though, right?
On the front and the back, there's very thick traces going to and from those ports. You're like, okay, if that's 12 volts, more than enough juice.
I thought you said that those were the grounds only. You couldn't see them.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Stop ruining it, bro. Jesus. So I scraped away some of the trace and I measured with some of the contacts and components. On the front and the back, those thick traces are ground. The ports actually get their 12 volt lines from layers inside the board. So we're saying that the Mac Pro has traces that are too thin to handle it. We don't even know how thick those traces are. We have no clue unless we take a Dremel and saw that board in half, which I'm not about to do. So those are the two biggest pieces of information on why we recommend the Pixlas Mod. And they both turn out to be bogus. So there's a lot more that factors into this, and I'm going to put it all in a blog article. But right now, unless your card draws more than, and I'm going to be conservative here, more than 180 watts on the 6-pin port, whether you're using 6 to 6 or 6 to 8 pin, if you're drawing more than 180 watts off of that port, I would still recommend the Pixlas Mod.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a basic card like any stock card or an R9 280X, you don't need a Pixlas Mod.
So Dan says he didn't do the Pixlas Mod, but he got a second power supply that turns on when I need it.
Yeah. Oh, that's one way to go about it.
Yeah, I've seen people do that. They put a it's kind of a what do you call it? Jerry-rigged system.
Yeah, it looks absolutely hideous in the cases I've seen it.
Yeah.
But, it gets the job done. But, Dan, I would be very interested if you can measure it with iStat menus or something, what 100% GPU load equals in your case. I'd be very interested how many watts you're pulling when the shutdowns happen.
Yeah.
So, and, of course, there is... Let's say that the port can indeed supply up to 210 watts reliably and sustained. We still don't know how thick those traces are.
Because they're on the
inside. So I would play it safe, because if the traces are a little bit on the thin side, then they get hot the more wattage you pull through it. When they get hotter, you get more electromigration, and the traces are going to wear themselves out. And the traces around it too, because it's all packed very densely on each other.
Well, not only that, but the board, if it's in the center of the board, if it's on a center layer of the board, you got the possibility of it heating up too much. And guess what? All of a sudden, you're going to see it arc over to something else, or you'll see the board warp a little bit or bubble.
Yeah, because we don't know the board design of those layers. Shut up, Dana. We don't know the board design of those layers, and electromigration can happen in the trace itself.
Yep.
Kind of like water running through sand. That sand is going to get pushed, and you can get a break in the line. But if those traces are close together, one line can actually start migrating to another line. It just finds the nearest copper, and if that happens to be a ground line or a 5-volt or 3-volt line, you blow up your board.
Well, and we've known Apple's design, looking at Louis Rossman sometimes, showing some of the stupid designs where they put a 24-volt pin next to a ground.
I don't agree with his assessment on that.
No, on the display, on some of the Mac books, the displays.
Nope. Actually, EEV blog took that statement and tested it, and Apple did design the board the way they should have. When people are stupid enough to spill stuff on their Mac,
that's true.
Anyone. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's like I said, I'm going to write about this, and you can read about it for like 6 pages of technical nonsense. But overall, if you don't know how much wattage your card pulls, or if you're going to push it to the limit with like a Titan or something ridiculous, definitely do the Pixlas Mod. If you have a stock card or a little 2 or 3 gig card that doesn't do much, I'd say you're probably safe without it. So.
Yep. And Dan says he's going to do it, but he wants to saw it directly to the PSU. That's an option, but that's a lot more work.
It is, and it's personal preference too.
And the cables that come with the Pixlas mod will probably not reach that far. And
you turned off your mic.
Mike, turn off your mic.
But not the mic, Mike.
Mike.
He's probably not listening to us.
No,
I can't mute him.
Sorry, I had to turn my camera off.
Your mic needs to go off too, because we're hearing everything you're saying.
Oh, sorry.
So there's still, I mean, the debate is not settled yet, but just going off of those 2 primary reasons, I would say it's debunked. It doesn't hold any water. We don't know exactly yet, but
you know what, Jay? I like the idea that I feel a little bit more safer having the Pixlas mod in here versus not having it.
Absolutely. I will continue to do the Pixels mod on my own systems. Just having that power going through, and the wire gauge, and that's another factor into this whole story, but I won't cover that now. The wire gauge from the power supply is like
super thick. Yeah.
So getting my 12 volts from there through 16 gauge cable or 18 gauge cable, opposed to the board, which we don't know how thick those traces are again. I feel better about it.
Yeah, because even if they're wide, just because they're wide and they're real thin, I mean, so that's you can have it wider and it makes it up to a certain gauge of wire, but I still don't trust that. And I'm gonna
if the ground planes or the ground traces are any indication, we're talking 15 millimeters. It's a very sizable trace.
Yeah.
And typically, what you see with cables is that the ground is always bigger than the 12 volt. So, I don't know. If the ground is already this big, I suspect that they've done their homework and that the 12 volt lines are more than adequate. But
again, we would hope so, but we're talking about Apple sometimes now.
Yeah. Until someone saws a board in half, we just don't know. So.
All right, because talking about that, I mean, the last thing we just did, the poll you just did, I was actually doing that with the Apple fan curve, and my CPUs were at 85 degrees, and it was red. I mean, it was like, you need to cool this down.
Yeah.
And I was like, uh-oh. So I was like, I'm stopping the test here, and I am going to turn back on TG Pro because I'm sorry, but I'm not burning up my CPUs for your test there, Jay. So sorry.
Now if you're in the Mac Pro upgrade group, I did a little poll. It's still running on. We're trying to figure out the D-rating curve of the Mac Pro power supply, which Apple of course doesn't document anywhere. But yeah.
Well, that and their fan curve does suck. I approve that.
It does.
Oh, be honest with you guys, if you have any love for your Mac Pro, use a fan control program.
Or any Apple product, really.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I did that yesterday, and this is no joke. My CPUs got the hottest I've ever seen them. And the fans still were not kicking in.
Yeah.
Apple, in its infinite wisdom of quiet versus, fans.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I just don't buy that. So
because that, not to go on too long about it, but it also the power supply rating also factors into how much wattage you can pull on your power card, on your graphics card. Because as your power supply gets hotter, the rating drops So the sticker says 980 watts. That's great. But at which temperature can it supply those 980 watts? Not at 80 degrees, I guarantee you that. Not at 70 degrees. It can probably hold that rating up to 50 degrees Celsius, and then for every 10 degrees you go up in temperature, you lose 25% of your rating. So you're going to be down to the 500s really quick. And if you then try to pull 200 something watts off of that 6-pin port, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
So,
that's the reason why you definitely need fan controls software, because it keeps your stuff cool.
So it's a fun little rabbit hole, and I'm still working on it. I'll finish it up this weekend and put an article out or a video. It's quite fun, but I hope to settle the debate at least to a point where we can stop arguing about it on Facebook.
All right, so we're ready for our next topic here.
I am. I need some water. My mouth is dry from all that talking.
All right, so next topic is flashing GPUs for the CMP. We put this one on here because it kind of relates to some of the stuff we've been talking about here. A lot of the GPUs for the classic Mac Pro, or the CMP, or the cheese grater, whatever you want to call it, a lot of the GPUs you can buy out there will not show a boot screen. So if you're trying to use like Boot Camp, or you want to boot different operating systems, Mac OS operating systems on it, you can't do that unless you actually go into the software and say, okay, I want it to restart into this OS the next time it starts up. So on my 6970, and I'll use this as an example, or not 6970, the 7970 that I got was a PC card. So it did not have a boot screen. I was able to actually flash it. I flashed it successfully, and now I actually have a boot screen. It works perfect. Don't have a problem with it. Some people will sit there and say, well, you don't really need a boot screen if you just run Mac OS, which you don't. If you're running just Mac OS, you don't need it. However,
unless you run into problems.
Yeah. However, here's another problem. When you're doing updates to Mac OS, okay, you cannot see the progress bar. So all you're going to see is a black screen until you get done, unless you throw a Mac card in there so you can actually see it. However, if you're doing Mojave or Catalina, you need a metal capable card. So you can't use anything below a metal capable card to, see the progress. So you're going to have to do that. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I flashed, because I sat there for almost 20 minutes or whatever it was the update was, waiting for it to go. And all I'm looking at is a black screen. So I have no clue if it's froze or locked up or anything. So that's my reasoning for actually performing the flash on it. And it's pretty easy. There's a lot of different websites out there you can go to actually learn how to flash it. There's YouTube videos out there to do it. And there's also a guy that you can actually pay to do it. You send your card to him. He does it for a fee and sends the card back to you. But, I'm not sure if we want to mention that on here or not, but he's not paying us. So
he's expensive.
That's a no.
He tends to let people wait a very long time.
Yes.
But the people that he has done it for are all raving about it. So must be something to it.
To each their own.
Yeah. So, Steve, tell us about your adventures in flashing.
So, back when I had a PC for gaming, I heard about flashing, and the first attempt I ever tried was on my dad's old AGP Power Mac G4s. It was a 450 megahertz model. And my friend had some old PC graphics cards, and we're like, oh, that's going to be better than the ATI Rage card that's in the G4 tower. Because at the time, whatever Apple shipped the thing with, that's what we had. So it was, I think it had 16 megs of video memory, so it wasn't that big. But anyway, we were trying to see if it was like a 32 meg model would work in there or whatever. So my friend tried to flash it, but we never had success with it. So years later, I got a G5 tower, which I met you guys on because I was playing Unreal Tournament 2004 from our wonderful
Yeah.
PowerPC Gaming League. Go on Facebook, search PPC Gaming Lounge. And I was getting an okay frame rate if I turn the resolution down, but the stock card in that G5 tower is a 6600 LE, NVIDIA GeForce 6600 LE. And it's just like not cutting it. I mean, had 128 megabytes of video memory, and I was like, oh, that's got to be good, but it was not cutting it. So I talked to you guys, and one of you suggested for the G5, one to get is a ATI Radeon X 1900 GT.
That was correct.
Yep, and so it's a 256 megabyte model, PCI Express or whatever. I forget the difference between Express and X. Whatever the G5 had, it was for that one. So I read that you could buy the PC version, so I found one on eBay, about $25 or so, and then started the fun process of flashing this card. So I did not have the luxury of using Boot Camp because this is a PowerPC Mac. So I needed to get an old PC, which I have a few of, and use that to flash this card. The problem was that whoever in their infinite wisdom decided to release these flashing updates, which are all unsupported, user created, fan base supported, whatever you want to call it, software, in their infinite wisdom, they decided, well, version 4, that's going to support different cards in version 4.0.1. So I spent 8 hours, because I tracked the time, flashing different versions or trying to flash different different ROMs using these different versions of the software. Windows-based ones, DOS-based ones, you name it, I tried it. I had a 64-bit version of Windows. I had to find a 32-bit version of Windows on an old hard drive because I didn't want to reinstall it. I was ripping what hair I had left out of my head trying to figure this stupid thing out. And I recorded most of it. Yeah, in the back. So I recorded most of it because I'm trying to figure out how the heck am I going to do this? Hey, maybe this will help somebody out if I can figure this out. By the end, I had no idea what the hell I did, but it worked. And after trying to flash this stupid card a bunch of times, I got it to work. Now it works beautifully. So it is in that G5. Is it worth it? Yeah, I guess if you have some patience. But the tricky part is the software. At least in my case, it was very difficult finding a piece of software that didn't error out and actually read the ROM file that I had as a ROM file, because there are so many variables you're going through when you're flashing this. Unless you're following someone's tried and true method who did the same exact model card, exact machine, like a PowerPC Mac or an Intel Mac as you may run into a lot of issues that you're not, going to expect. And, that could be the ROM you're using or the version of the flash you're using, or how you're doing it. Is it through Windows with a nice GUI interface that's all fancy? Or are you going back to the Stone Ages and using DOS prompts? So, to each their own. I had some success with it. It took a lot more time than I was originally planning, but I guess it was worth it in the end. That's my personal journey. So, cautionary tale, I guess.
Yeah, so Fuseki, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Or her name, I don't know. He said, just flashed a Quadro FX 4500 for my DC 2.0 G5.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I was going back and forth between the Quadro and the Radeon. I just stuck with the Radeon because that's what was recommended to me. And it was, I got it for $23 on eBay. I looked at my history here, and it seems like it went up in price to $25. So, hot commodity these days.
Yeah.
Supply and demand,
But I was sure to get the little PCI 6-pin mini power cable or whatever for the G5 because mine didn't happen to come with one. So
when I
got that, I guess if you're flashing, make sure you have the appropriate power connected to it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a 5770 in here before, and I didn't mind running it off of the 6-pin because there's only one 6-pin connector on it, So yeah, I have. Yeah, this is mine. So
we're matching.
Oh. Well, it's not actually matching. This is actually a PC one. It's not flashed yet.
Yeah, this is the Mac one.
This has not been flashed for the Mac yet.
You can tell because of the little monitor port by the
I've read ports. problems on these are that if you flash them, you lose one of the DVI ports.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's what I've read on this particular card. If you flash it for the Mac, is you lose one of the DVI ports. So I'm like, do I want to do that?
I am
Yeah,
against
and
flashing PC cards
Huh?
because they
yeah,
always have these hideous graphics on it, and I hate it. It's just a
well,
personal
I
thing.
just a word of warning to anybody watching this being, hey, I'm going to do that right now. It's not guaranteed. PC cards are manufactured in such bulk that there are revision differences. The ROM chip on the board can maybe be a different size than you're expecting. A lot of the times the Mac ROM is like double the size of the PC ROM. So the ROM, let's say on the card, is a 256 kilobyte ROM. Well, the Mac ROM is maybe 512 kilobyte. Some people have to trim the ROM files or patch them or whatever to trick them onto the card. It's not a foolproof process.
Yeah.
And if you don't back up the original ROM while
You're
you're
never going to
attempting
use
to
that card
flash
again.
it, you could brick your card and never, be able to use that again, as Greg is saying. So just a word of warning for that. Do your research. Don't just buy a card on eBay because it's cheap and cross your fingers and hope it's going to work. Do your research.
Yeah,
And
I had to.
if you
I
want someone
actually.
else to do it, Steve actually flashes card any card you want for $10. So
Yeah, just $100 processing fee plus the $10 in shipping, and you're golden.
Yeah. See, now on my particular card that I flashed, I actually built my own ROM. There are methods out there to build your own ROM. Basically, all you're doing is you're taking your ROM, you download your ROM from the card, and you're adding the EFI boot into the ROM. So there's different methods out there. They have scripts made up for that. And that's how I did mine. So basically, I made a ROM specifically using my original ROM specifically to add the EFI to the card. So I didn't go and because there's some people out there that have bricked their cards by going and downloading a ROM from somebody. And it, like Steve just said, the revisions might just be a little bit off, and you will brick your card because you'll throw that ROM on there, and that ROM was not actually intended for that particular hardware on the card. And guess what? It's not going to work. So,
And good luck finding that ROM, because these ROM files are shared online. Let's say they're on some old file hosting Angel Fire website from like 1996. Yeah, that ROM file is gone now. And maybe the one that has the same file name of ATI.ROM is not going to be the same one you've been looking for. So
yeah, that's
you got to be very careful.
Yeah, that's the reason why Steve mentioned it in the first part is make sure you down or back up your ROM that you have on the card first. And the ATI
Back it up
WinFlash,
twice.
yeah. Now they actually have a program. It's for Windows. You have to do it under Windows, of course, but it's called ATI WinFlash. And if you use that, you can actually back up your
Bad memories.
ROM with a click of a button. That's all it takes, and you
Or
have a
command
ROM
prompt.
file. Yeah. I prefer the Windows method. I tried the command prompt method, and I suck at it, so I'd rather have the GUI.
Unfortunately, mine was the opposite. I was like, yeah, I'm going to use a GUI. I'm going to be modern. And back to the Stone Ages with a floppy disk bootable DOS installation.
All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic here, which is one that we should talk about a little bit. And basically, group FaceTime. We've been using this for almost a year now. Almost. Okay. I think we started doing this show back in November. I think Jay and I were talking about this.
I think so, November. Yeah.
Yeah. So we started doing this around November. So it's almost been a year that Group FaceTime actually has been out. Because remember, Group FaceTime came out, I think, in September of last year. I want to say, or September or October. I can't remember.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, we did without for a few weeks because of that eavesdropping bug in iOS and macOS.
Yeah. Then we actually had to use Skype at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do some more experimentation with that because I think we can get Skype to work in here. I think it's Wirecast that's causing an issue right now. So I'm going to try OBS next time, Jay, just to see
Well,
But
did you update your Wirecast? Because
I don't know. I have to look and see.
Yeah, I don't think you have.
Yeah, I may not have. So, anyways, but it shouldn't affect Wirecast, the older version. It should. I mean, updates shouldn't break stuff. I mean, but anyways,
Shouldn't.
Yeah.
what do we think about group FaceTime so far? I think it for the broadcast here. I don't like it because people have already said they don't like the bouncing around windows, and there's a lot of empty space there.
Yeah.
Even when we're looking at it, like on my iPad here, I'm looking at it. There's a lot of black space left out there.
Looks like my video crapped out just as we're talking about this.
Yeah.
So
No, you're. Oh yeah, on the computer it did. Yep.
I'm gonna kill it and come back.
Okay. But that's other issues we've had with it. Jay's video the last few weeks. Actually, tonight it's not too bad on the computer.
Yeah, you can actually see my face now, but the last few weeks, I'm just a giant pixel with 2 eyeballs, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
on the iPad here, you're crystal clear, Jay, but on the computer, you're not. So it's yeah, you're actually just an SM on the stream here. So
here we go again.
See, this is the problem. No, I was not going to praise it at all. To be honest with you, group FaceTime is okay for simple things, but for something like what we're doing here from MacYak is not.
Yeah,
it's not feasible.
It's nice for friends and family, just a quick call.
Yeah,
but for the few seconds that Skype was kind of working earlier, you saw my video was crystal clear.
Crystal clear, yep.
And then we had to switch to FaceTime, so I turned it on my Mac Pro, which has an external camera and microphone, and the noise cancellation didn't work, so you guys had echo. So I'm forced to use FaceTime on my phone because the Mac, at least the Mac Pro with an external microphone, can't handle the noise cancellation, the echo cancellation. A MacBook Pro can do it.
Yeah.
With the built-in mic and built-in speakers and all that. A Mac Pro, not. So that already...
I think it's a hardware thing on the Mac Pro versus because it's built to the noise cancellation hardware is probably built into the MacBook versus the Mac Pro is not designed to do that.
It is, and the iMac benefits from that as well, I think.
Well, yeah, because it's built into it, because you've got a built-in microphone and a built-in webcam into the iMac versus the Mac Pro, which doesn't have anything built in.
Yeah.
And you're still a yellow M&M. But
do we have his audio at least on the stream?
Say something, Steve. No, we don't have his audio.
We asked you to speak, not sing, bro. Come on.
Yeah, for some reason it's not. Let me. I think it might be. I might have to disconnect to reconnect. So let me try that real quick. Hold on, guys. I'm just now the stream is not going to disconnect. I'm just disconnecting FaceTime. So let me try that.
But.
All right,
you guys were talking smack about FaceTime.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tim Apple had us like on, or had a thing in there to actually say, Okay, let's listen to those MacYak guys, see if they're ragging on us now. Oh, we're going to cut their stuff.
Yay, we're back. Kind of.
Yeah, we're back. This is the problem we've been having this whole time we've been using group FaceTime is someone will leave the stream, someone comes back in.
Or it just dies on its own.
Or it just dies on its own. Like what just happened a minute ago is I had it up and it just quit completely. And
it's all because I just wanted to be seen.
Yeah, Tim Apple killed it. So, yeah, that's the problem we've been having FaceTime. So, to be honest with you, I don't think they're actually doing anything to improve group FaceTime.
No.
I don't think they are going to do it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go on, Jay.
No, go ahead.
I liked how Skype was not cropping my video frame. I mean, we all have widescreen cameras on our phones and our computers, and we're cropped to these little squares, and I kind of understand why they would do that, but also, all of us floating around and stuff like that, let me rearrange, you so you're over here, you so you're over here, and maybe expand you a little bit. If you're going to shove me into little squares, let me move them around and rearrange them. Maybe not on the phone. Let me do that on the iPad or whatever. Like, give me some options there.
Well, let me do that on the Mac. Because
or the Mac, yeah.
The Mac, I have lots of screen real estate. Okay?
Exactly.
And here's another drawback of group FaceTime. Only 4 people can show up on the screen at one time.
Yeah, it's silly. Yeah, when they demoed it, they did not, try and even... I mean, I'm pretty sure I don't know what build they were on, but, I think I saw more than, 4 or 5 people on that screen at the same time. And they were, scrolling through a bunch of things, and I'm like, I don't think that's going to be realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not impressed with the quality. They compress the hell out of it, and I don't like it. And, the back-end issues. It all depends on Apple server. And even though when you look at the status page, and you see little green balls everywhere, everything is working, we know it's not.
Those hamsters are running on those treadmills overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll stick with it until we find a better alternative. Well, we are looking for a better alternative.
We are looking for better alternatives, trust me. That's...
Yeah, if we ever maxed out group FaceTime, I think Apple's server would crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for trying Skype again when Wirecast is behaving. Maybe that'll be a nice treat. It's when we try these new video things. We're all joking that things are breaking or whatever, but everything's different. Skype might be using a port to send data that Wirecast may be using, or YouTube is using. Who knows? There's all this stuff that there are all these variables at play. So yeah, FaceTime isn't the best. We use it because most of the time we know its quirks and we can get around getting it to work. It would be interesting to try something else.
It's the lesser of all the evils out there currently.
Yeah. And I mean, I personally am always interested in trying out different solutions for things. So maybe we'll find something better. Who knows?
Yeah,
you guys in the chat have suggestions, let us know.
We're going to do some experimentation this week. So next week, hopefully we'll have a solution to get rid of this. Because to be honest with you, I mean, I'm looking at a lot of blank space up there that we could have some background there that I can't do. And here's another problem with group FaceTime and FaceTime in general. When you bring up group FaceTime on the computer, it cuts out audio on everything except for FaceTime.
Yeah, it totally hijacks the system.
It hijacks the system audio, and basically you can't even listen to anything else on the computer.
That's a feature.
That's supposed. Yeah,
it's not a bug.
But there's no settings for you to change any of this. Like Steve was saying, why can't I put boxes whatever size I want to put them on there where they're not floating around and
Yeah, make them sticky. Let me just scale Greg over here. I'll put Jay over here. I'll put Mike over here. Let me do some of this.
And yeah, like I said, it's cute when I'm calling my parents and I'm showing their grandson and they can both see it in the same call, or it's New Year and we all call each other. Before it was an iPad pointed at a Mac, the Mac was pointed at another phone, and the phone was, we had to put all these individual calls together. So it has its uses, but not for, like Greg said, what we're doing now, or even when we call each other, say, hey, I'm taking apart a Mac Pro to cut it in half. Oh, let's jump on FaceTime. And 2 a.m. we're all on FaceTime. I can't really show what I'm doing because it compresses the hell out of it, and I'm stuck in a tiny square. So it has its uses, but
Now, one-on-one FaceTime, it's a little bit better.
Yes, I like FaceTime, the one-on-one version, immensely. I have used it many times with friends and family. I think it works well. I think it's just that scaling that, obviously, and as Jay as an alien here would like to talk
like, is
about.
this why we use it?
Yes,
Is
this
this
is why
it?
we use it. I think it's great to have one-on-one, and yes, the group FaceTime, there's a lot of extra video processing and stuff, which is hard to do. But I mean, it just is kind of
It's got
falling
that high
apart.
twitch.
Maybe at some point they'll give us some functionality that matches at least the iOS on the Mac. I'd love to see like the full screen scaling or whatever. But imagine you have like one of those LG 5K displays or a 5K iMac, and you're doing group FaceTime. And you have like 3 people. Look at all that black space you have on that screen. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yep, I agree. All right, guys. Anything else on group FaceTime? Now he's a turd.
He's group FaceTime. That's what he's dressing up as.
Poop FaceTime.
Poop FaceTime.
Sorry, that was lame.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was funny. I liked
That
it.
was lame.
Jake, we tried Discord, and even on a 12-core Mac Pro, it takes every system resource it can get to the point where it crawls to a halt. It's not.
And this
very
is
well
talking from a
optimized.
piece of poo, so he's serious.
I know a piece of shit when I see it.
Yeah.
That's a ringing endorsement.
God.
And my
All right.
eye is not twitching, by the way, but FaceTime is having some issues beaming its IR through glasses. So
Yeah, he's winking at us. That's what he's doing.
yeah.
Well, Londo, the thing with Discord, we've got to remember Discord is a free or it's an open source product. So you're going to have a
It's
lot.
not going to be optimized for everything.
Exactly. It's almost like Linux. Linux is not optimized for a whole lot of stuff. We just got that discussion out of the way, but Discord is in that same kind of boat because it's open source, and you got a lot of people working on it, and so it's not the greatest in the world, especially for video. It's good for audio and text and what we do over there on Discord, on the MacYac channel on Discord, but I just can't see us doing it on here.
Discord is kind of like iTunes. It's just way too full of stuff that they don't need in there.
Yeah, in fact, Jake just said it. Discord is trying to shoehorn a lot of stuff in there, and that's exactly what the problem is. They're trying to put too much stuff in it, and it's getting as bloated as iTunes was. Yeah. So, all right, Mike. So you're up next with your Mac Shack. I'm not going to be able to pull up your pictures too much, so you're going to have to just kind of talk your way through this. Sorry.
Well, that sucks because I sweated my butt off to take those pictures.
I'm sorry.
At least
hold the pictures up on your phone and shove it in front of the camera. Old fashioned.
The problem is I'm using my phone, so I'm kind
pull
of
it up
screwed
on
there
something
too.
else.
And I took them, and I actually took them with my 24 megapixel Sony camera, so they were like perfect.
Now, what group FaceTime should do, just saying this, sorry to cut anybody off.
No, that's fine.
Who remembers iChat Theater? Yeah. They should frickin' do that. If I have an image, I want to put it up as my square or something. Why the heck can I do that? That'll be awesome. There's so many times I'm FaceTiming someone like this for now, and I want to show an image from my camera roll or a video clip. Like, why can I do that? Come on.
Yeah, because as soon as you... Okay. All right, Mike, it's all you.
Okay, so something I've seen a lot popping up on Facebook lately in the Mac groups is it seems like people are getting eMacs all of a sudden, and maybe it's just me, but it just seems like lately a lot of people are getting Mac Pros that are better than mine for free, and Emacs, and I'm like, okay, well, I like Emacs. The Emacs are cool. They're like an iMac on steroids. So, in case anybody doesn't know, I actually have an Emac in my shack. It's a 1.25 gigahertz. It's one of the later models.
Nice.
And it's got some twitchy issues. It doesn't like to always power on. I think it's going to need a power supply soon. But overall, it's a great machine. So I thought I would do a little thingy on the Emac. So one of the most misunderstood computers that Apple made back in the early 2000s. The iMac, of course, everybody knows the iMac. It's like the iMac is famous. They still make the iMac today. Well, the eMac was kind of a blah-looking white box. Well, actually, it was a blah-looking white monitor. And it's kind of a strange machine, but if you ever have a chance to pick one up, I definitely suggest it if you like older Power Macs.
And you like lifting things.
Oh, my God, yes. The bloody things are probably 50 or 60 pounds at minimum.
Let's see. 50 pounds is the weight, yeah.
Yeah, they weigh a bloody ton. But for the size of the machine, you can't get, especially if you can manage to get one of the later models. Like I said, mine's the one that I have that I use is a 1.25, which is actually one of the fastest ones. I don't know if they made them in 1.42s or not.
Yeah, I think the 1.42 was the last one made.
I am showing your pictures, by the way, so I'm going through them as you're showing.
I like your power switches under the eMac. That's cool.
Thank
you. That looks older than the eMac.
And you got the stand for it. That's sweet.
Actually, I picked three of them up at one time. They were recycling. They were supposed to go to recycling, and all three of them had stands.
Wow.
Greg Retke has one, and I still have two. One's at 800, and then the 1.25.
For the record, I was supposed to get one of those along with a whole bunch of other shit, but that.
Well, it's still there. Actually, I'm giving you a motherboard. I'm not giving you the whole machine. So, but the eMac was the educational version of the iMac. It was a PowerPC G4 processor, a 7450 actually. They came anywhere from 750 or 800 megahertz all the way up to, as Steve said, 1.42 gigahertz. They're all only single processor machines, so they're not going to be the super powerhouses that, the G4 towers or whatever are. That's why you buy a G4 tower or an MDD, whatever. So the later model supports the full 2 gigs of memory. The early ones, I believe, only support 1. They are an absolute nightmare to work on inside. They're actually easier to get apart than the original iMac, but they have so much stuff crammed into such a tiny space.
Yeah.
And it's all crammed in with a CRT monitor. Now, the coolest thing is yes, they're CRTs, but they're, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, they're 17-inch CRTs.
Yeah, it's like a 16-inch viewable, but still an inch and a half probably bigger than the viewable on the CRT V3 iMacs.
But they're flat screens. So, and
I'm actually pretty impressed with the CRTs on eMacs. They're really nice.
They're actually one of the crispest CRTs, and I actually think that what do they call it, the studio display?
Yeah, I think they had a surplus of the CRTs from the studio displays and shoved them in the
exactly. And I agree with you. I think it's the same exact display. I don't remember who makes it off the top of my head. I've stripped a couple of them over the years, but anybody looking for a budget G4 machine, doesn't have a lot of space, wants something that's pretty quick. I definitely get an eMac. Now, don't expect your power bill to go down when you buy this thing. But, I use one. I use it to do a lot of my older computer work down at the shack. It's set up. It's operational. And I use it to back data up and, off of hard drives and stuff. Now, unfortunately, the USB is only 1.1. But
the later ones were 2.0, like the tail
I
end
think
of.
the very last model was.
There are two models because I have the one before the last, the 1.25 gigahertz USB 2.
CRT, the CRT can do 65 up to 120 hertz, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but at the low resolution, so it's like 800 by 600 at
Yeah, because
120.
I think I have it set to, while I was using it, I had mine set to 95, and I didn't feel it on my eyes. You know that the typical strain you feel when you look at a CRT. I
Yeah.
didn't have that. Even when I took pictures or video, it barely flickered, and it's just a really nice CRT. I'm very impressed with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's one of the nicest ones I think that Apple ever used in a in one of their displays, with the exception of the Sony Trinitrons. But even those those don't even hold a candle to it. So
yeah. So the first three models looks like are USB 1.0 because Apple was very stupid slow in adopting USB 2.0, and then the
yeah.
April 2004 model onward, the last remaining two were USB 2, thankfully.
Oh, okay. So mine is a USB 2. Okay, well that's kind of
Sweet.
cool.
Now
Nice.
I don't own many of them. I own 3,
That's one
actually
more than I
4
have.
now. But from what I hear and read, and the little bit of personal experience I have, the power supplies are pretty iffy at this point in time, right? With the Karuds.
Yeah, because you see the problem with them is they're exposed to more heat than your typical computer because of having the CRT. And I, like I said, I think that's the problem with the one that I have, that I use. It works fine. Once I get the machine booted up, it's rock solid. It'll run for months at a time and never have an issue. It's just the initial firing up the machine. I think that the startup, either the startup relay or startup caps, are starting to get a little weak.
Have you replaced the PRAM battery on it?
It's got a. You know what? Now that you said that, I don't remember.
Because the reason I'm saying this is I got one recently for free because it was a CRT. Nobody knew what the heck to do with it.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the.
Steve, you get everything for free.
Yeah, see how it is.
It was a
Don't
CRT.
even say that
Nobody
damn
wanted
word.
it. And
Just
they
like the
plugged
Mac,
it
just
in,
like the Mac
it didn't
Pro,
work.
right?
Yeah, well, they plugged this one in. It didn't work. And I think I did a live messing around with it with you guys on FaceTime, and somebody suggested ripping out the PRAM battery. I did, and it booted up right away. So it might be that, but it could be the capacitors. I remember there was a few repair programs for this because my cousin at the time had an eMac, and they had to bring it to the Apple store, and they actually swapped it. I think it was a logic board on it because they had graphics card issues.
Ah, okay. So but I mean
for
that's the
future
only
reference,
issue.
Steve. Sorry, Mike.
You're
When
fine.
you see posts online and stuff like, "Oh, I got this really cheap," or "I got this free," like, "Oh man, good find. This guy deserves a break." But if you keep bringing stuff home that's always free or ridiculously cheap, we don't like you anymore. Okay?
I'll cancel
Keep
my
that in mind.
shipment to you, Jay. Hold on, let me cancel this shipment here. Okay, sorry, Jay. Your
Very
shipment's
convincing.
canceled.
Thank you.
So, but anyway, yeah. So if for people who are out there looking for older machines, and especially for guys who want to get into the power PC gaming, they're great. The faster ones are great gaming machines. They have great screens on them. Yeah, they're not widescreen. They're not LCDs.
But neither are the old games. So the old games aren't widescreen either.
And the upgrade path on these things is nil. But if you need a rock solid, reliable machine, compact, easy to to play with, but as long as if you don't want to get into it and start tearing stuff apart, do this, do that, it's a great machine.
As long as you don't want to carry it around, because these things.
Yeah, you don't want to move it around. I can tell you that, and I can also tell you for a fact that 95 to 98% of the machines that you will find will not have the stand. The 3 that I got were the first 3 that I ever saw in my life with a stand. And if you want the machine to be a half decent, usable machine, you gotta find a stand. And they're out there. They're still readily available. I mean, Steve's got 2 of them. He's hoarding in his basement, still in the damn boxes.
Only one has the stand. I actually have a box from the stand, but only because when I was in school, as I was saying in the chat, when I was in high school setting up these Emacs, we got like 20 of them at the class, and the teacher didn't get the G5s because she claimed the iMac G5s would be tipped over by the students, but they were just cheap. I was one of the kids that was helping out, and I screwed on the stands of all those Emacs, and boy, those are heavy. So without that stand, like Mike said, it's hard to move that monitor around.
And it sits very low too. So, but it's a good machine, for a G4 machine.
Now,
it's definitely more reliable than an MDD and a Quicksilver. I can tell you that for a fact. But those, of course, are more powerful.
I'm curious, what's your opinion comparing like the 2005 Mac Mini to the eMac? They have the same type of processor, around the same speed, and even the last Mac Mini looks like it has the same video circuitry, the same ATI 9200.
The Mac Mini, the original G4 Mac Mini, was an eMac. It was just a shrunken down eMac. It basically, they took an eMac and said, hey, we have all these parts for these eMacs because we sold 1 trillion of these things to the educational market. So why don't we just reconfigure these things and just make it into a smaller box and then make everybody buy their own parts? It's essentially what the original Mini was. Because if you actually, I've worked on the original Minis. And those are actually some of the only ones I've ever worked on, thank God. But if you actually crack them open, you have the same processor. Now, of course, it uses laptop memory instead of desktop memory. It uses a laptop hard drive instead of a desktop hard drive.
Well, the original G4 Mini uses desktop memory. They only had one big.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was the Intel one that used the laptop memory. That's right. But I think they're limited to 1 gig though.
Yeah, that's the thing. The later eMac models can have 2 gigs. The Mac Mini can only have 1 gig. So
yeah.
I think, the eMacs are heavy as anything, but if you have the space for it, you have a nice built-in CRT.
I think really it for like bang for your buck. I actually think you're better getting an eMac than a Mini.
Plus, people don't want the CRT. They cost money to recycle, so you probably get it dirt cheap.
And,
well, I buy them for like $5.
The eMac just cools better, even though it has the giant CRT on it. Cools better.
If you look inside the
fan
eMac,
on it too.
Yeah, and if you take one apart, you might have seen it, Mike, when you were taking yours apart, probably in the photo too. It has a heck of a big heatsink for the processor.
It does, and it's got a 120 millimeter fan in the back, and it's actually it's in a perfect location to collect all the dust in your house. But it's also in a great location because it's at the back of the CRT.
And the speakers on the eMac are nice too, aren't they?
They are. They're very nice, and they're not prone to the rot that the iMacs are. They're not reflexive speakers. They're not specialized speakers. They're just regular old. What are they? 2.5-inch speakers. So, and I don't know if you know this or not, Steve. Assembling eMac. The speaker grills are actually removable and interchangeable.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, do you have another tidbit of info about those speaker grills? Because I believe you originally told me about those speaker grills and why they are designed the way they are designed.
Yes, there's the eMac, of course, originally was made just for education.
Yeah.
Okay, so the original speaker grills on the original eMacs have really small holes. And actually, I think I took pictures of both sets of them, Greg. The original eMac speaker grills have small holes. And this is for one reason only. Kids poke things. Okay? The later models, you could get, and as the eMac went on, Apple realized that, hey, people want a budget machine for their home. So the eMac was the budget machine. Because the G4 iMac was ridiculously expensive because its LCD just added like $1,000 to it. It's a beautiful machine, but ridiculously expensive for the time.
Yeah, so the eMac might have the grills on it. I don't know.
So the eMac was a cheaper alternative to the iMac. So the home models, you could either take the grills off and just have them just open, or you could have the ones with the bigger holes. So, and I actually have both. I'm sending Jay a set of I think the bigger hole ones, and sometimes when I
You're
show
breaking
mine,
up there, Mike.
sometimes when I show mine off, I just take the grills off because it looks cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice machine. And if to kind of build on to last week's topic, if you are a collector, or if you want to start a collection, an eMac should definitely be part of it, in my opinion.
I'm not going to get one. I collect, but I'm not going to collect an eMac.
So
I have an
not
iMac.
a real collector.
I have an iMac G3 here, graphite, so that's close enough.
Well, the nice thing about the eMac is, especially if you're just getting started, they're cheap. I mean, the G3 iMac, people want stupid money for. I mean, I just found 2 of them on Craigslist. The guy wants like $150 for the pair, which is like
There's
$100 more than I'm willing to pay.
There's that old saying there: want in one hand and poop in the other, and see which one fills up faster.
And then on the other hand, you got the G4 iMac and all of them.
Steve?
Yeah.
They're, people want stupid money for those, but the eMac, people will sell you an eMac for $10.
Yeah,
well, it's big and it's heavy and they don't want it.
Or you could get a Mac Pro for free like Steve.
Yeah, well.
If shipping is involved, don't get an eMac.
No, do not ship the damn thing. And first of all, it's a tough, I can tell you for a fact, and I know this from personal experience, the eMac is way overbuilt. The damn thing weighs a ton, but it can take a fall from about 3 feet, come out virtually unscathed, and still work. Because the one I use
machine.
Until you send it to the USPS, and then it won't survive that.
Yeah, but because the one that I actually use on a daily basis, I had sitting on a table in the shack, and it fell off because it's perched precariously, fell off, and aside from a small little chip in the case, still works perfect.
Bulletproof polycarbonate. There you go.
Yep.
Pretty much, unless you give it to UPS.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and move on. Next up is Steve's Archive Adventures. So we're going to throw it over to Steve now.
Cool. So I did a live stream a few months ago where I got a bunch of bins of cables and software from someone. And I was just organizing those and putting them on the shelves I built. And I found some documentation I scanned in. I'm going to paste the links in here as I'm talking about it. Here we go. Here's the first one. So, nope, that's the second one here. Sorry. Here's the second one. So,
way to prepare, Steve. Way to prepare.
Yeah, well, I copied and pasted the wrong damn thing. Now I'm talking longer. So what I did was I scanned them in. So the first one is this disk array documentation. I guess this came in the box for a Micronet Raven 800 disk array. And this is for a Quadra 800 or 840 AV. Unfortunately, I don't have the disk array, but there's like a packing list type thing and a little how-to guide about it. So I thought that was pretty neat. So I scanned that in. The next thing I saw was quite a bit thicker. This is about 80 pages. I'm back. Oh,
yeah, you're back. You froze for a second there.
That's my Wi-Fi doing its thing. This is the second thing I scanned in. This Disk Express 2 Power Optimizer from Alsoft from 1993. I have no idea if this software is any good or not, but I had the manual. I went to Macintosh Garden, downloaded the software, could not find the manual in the help section of the software or anything. So I figured, let's scan it in. And that's what I did. So that's also on the Internet Archive, and I'm pasting that link into YouTube now. So you guys can take a look at that if you want. I don't know if this is useful to anybody, but I thought this might be the only copy that's in decent shape, so might as well scan it in. And I did that. So that's what I had for my archiving adventures, I guess, this week. Is a lot of scanning in and fighting with the printer that likes to get jammed on the automatic document feeder. So
yeah, can I add something?
Of course.
A lot of coincidentally, a lot of documents are being sold on Marketplace and various Facebook groups at the moment. And there's always a call out. If it's not me, it's Steve. If it's not Steve, it's someone else. Everybody does a call out like, hey, do you mind scanning these and uploading them somewhere for preservation before you sell them? Hardly anyone ever does, to my knowledge. But yeah, if you have old Apple manuals or repair guides or anything that might be interesting, just scan it in, upload it to what's that website you put your stuff on?
Archive.org?
Archive.org or
Yeah, the
somewhere
Internet
else,
Archive.
just for preservation, and then by all means sell it, but at least other people can enjoy it.
And the problem is, I mean, there was the box of like Apple service manuals, whatever this guy had. I got in touch with him. He wanted a boatload of money for him. His original offer didn't go through with somebody else. He offered it to me again. I looked on the Internet Archive. 99% of what he was selling was already there. So, I'd rather actually have them in nice, neat little PDF files than like 15 volumes of thick binders that are taking up space on my shelf.
Yeah.
A PDF I could search through and stuff like that,
Yeah, if you're worried that making it publicly available is going to diminish the value of whatever you're selling, then scan it in, sell it, and then upload it. You
also,
can still get
some
your
people
full
will
value.
always prefer the hard copy, or they don't want to look at a screen all day. It's by all means sell the damn thing, but if you could easily scan it in, you're not hurting anybody, and you may have the last copy of that. Don't be greedy. We're all in this, Mac craziness together, so preserve that, share it.
That was an inspirational speech.
Made Jay cry. Look at that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Cry with anger.
As he's still seething that you got 5 Macs or Mac Pros for free.
Yeah, you see all the scratches on my hands with broken glass pouring out of them.
Dude, the only reason I watched your live stream is because I wanted to see them catch on fire, and they just freaking worked. And
I can't tell you how. The one with the bent handle, I keep getting my pinky finger like shoved in under that handle, and like I want to drop it on my toe because it's really heavy. But I'm not gonna be hanging on to these machines. They take up way too much damn space, and I don't need 5 Mac Pros.
There you go.
So keep the 3,1s and the 5,1.
Who wants to pay shipping?
I'll pay shipping.
Okay, I'll be out this weekend. I don't want to buy. I'll be happy with the 3,1.
There you go. You could choose which one you want.
Okay, I'll be out this weekend. Text me your address.
Will do.
And then you can see what the Saturn looks like after I asshole a Buick Century.
All right, guys, we're getting over time here, even though we did start late, but we're getting close to our time limit here. But we don't really have a time limit. But anyways, so the next segment is the what were they smoking? And I actually found this at last minute today because I was like, I pulled up eBay, and on the bottom down there where it says, suggestions, I saw this listing down there. So I clicked on it, and let me post it in the chat here. Come on, why is it not? Is it too big to post, or I guess it is. It's not letting me post it.
Yeah, you're about 140 characters over.
Yeah. Anyways, shit.
But I got
Show
you.
Picture of it.
Don't worry, I got you.
All right. Anyways,
nope.
This
didn't work.
This particular Power Mac G5, and I'll pull it up the link here. Let me see if I can open the link real quick. This guy's he's selling a dual G5, a dual processor G5, and it kind of looks like he's missing parts on it.
All right, there it is. I got it.
Yeah, the fans on the back look like they're not the stock fans because it's the cover's not all the way over. But anyways, he's wanting $331, which, if you think about it, is not a whole lot. However, I wouldn't pay more than $50 for a G5 nowadays, to be honest with you. This one
50?
actually has, and now he puts in his description, Apple Power Mac G5 with Adobe Suite, Photoshop, Office, Logic Pro, and more.
Well, if you see the word contribute in there and you know anything about Adobe, you know to stay far away from this machine.
Yeah. But he has a buy it now price of $331.99. Now, why did he come up with that price for a buy it now price? I don't know, but $331.99, and plus you shipping is $40 shipping is what he has.
That thing is exactly worth, not even worth, the cost of shipping.
Yeah, I told you. So what does Sell My Mac want for it?
Nothing.
Oh yeah, they won't even.
He sold one
pay you
because it says 2 available. So
whoa, wait. Let's see what this one sold for.
Hey, this is the exact same machine that I have, and I paid $5 for mine.
Exactly. Not including.
You know, the sad thing, and this is sad, but the G5 towers, the aluminum case is worth more than the actual computer is anymore.
Okay, it doesn't have an offer. It doesn't show what he accepted, but he accepted an offer from somebody on there. So I don't know what exactly, because it doesn't show the exact offer amount, which is weird. It usually used to do that. But anyways, to be honest with you, I think that he was smoking. So now here's the question, guys: what was he smoking?
Some good ganja, that's for damn sure.
Yeah,
Whatever he's smoking, I want some.
It's not as outrageous as some of the stuff we've seen, but it's still pretty out there. So I would say good old original Dutch imported weed. Not that garbage they sell in America, but the import stuff.
I think he delidded some GPUs or some CPUs rather, and was snorting what was inside.
Here's one of the pictures he has on here. It says, it's got some comments that says, "Sorry, I keep obsessing, but this is worth mentioning. Eventually, with time, these machines become obsolete. But with a little bit of time, consideration, and patience, they become completely capable of so many things. And professional applications and software are like 1,000,000 times cheaper. I mean, sure, you don't get the latest features, but..." And it says read more, but you can't see it, but...
I do agree with that. And as we mentioned in the past, if you use an era-appropriate operating system and software, it'll be as fast today as it was when it was brand new, which at the time was very impressive. But it's still not worth $330.
But here's the thing, though: the age-appropriate software is getting more and more aged, and you're not able to do.
Oh, you can't do YouTube. I forgot.
Well, I'm not talking about YouTube. I'm talking about, let's say, doing video production on it.
You only got to run Final Cut 3 on it.
Yeah. So
and it's slow as Final Cut 2. Final Cut 3 on the G5 is slow as hell.
Exactly. That's what I was getting ready to say. It's going to be slow. So the money you're saving on buying this thing far outweighs the money if you spend it on, like for me, I spent $150 for my Mac Pro, which is half the price of this G5.
Yeah.
And then you have people like Steve that got one for free, so he basically saved $331.
And truthfully, you could buy a Mac Pro 1,1 and it'll blow this thing out of the water.
Oh yeah.
Oh, easily.
And you can buy those Mini for cheaper than that. No,
you can buy a 1,1 Mac Pro for $20.
Dude, I got a 1,1 for free.
So. Yeah, I mean, I got mine for free too. Now, mine was stripped. I mean, I had to build it, but I mean, I got the main machine for nothing. Yeah. Actually, I got a pair of them for nothing because nobody wants them.
Yeah, it's if you really want what looks to be a first or second gen G5 with base configuration processors, and by all means, but wait for it to show up on Marketplace, or wait for it to show up at a recycler. Do not buy it on eBay, because even if it was $5, the shipping alone exceeds the value of the Mac. So
and would beat the heck out of it during shipping too.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
I'm actually surprised somebody bought one, to be honest with you, but either they're very, very, they really, really want one, or they're very, very naive.
Yeah.
Well, it could also be eBay's a global thing. Maybe they don't have them where this guy wants one,
or he doesn't exactly. Or here's the third option: it's somebody that doesn't know what it is. They see all that sugar coating, like Londo said. he said he's sugarcoating it because you get a lot of people on there that don't know about computers, and they see, oh, it does all that? Here.
Oh, this will be good for
$300?
my grandson.
Exactly.
Here's for your graduation, son.
That's exactly the kind of people that these people go after.
Well,
go
the fourth.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say there is a fourth option too, and there is possibility that somebody needed one for something that they're still running. I do know there are still some places that still run these machines.
True.
I mean, I'm still using one as a server. You know,
well, I still have one in my other room that I use to play UT on, but that's pretty much
but it's a valid point. A lot of people in graphics, and we're talking people in graphics that spend tens or maybe hundreds of thousands on pre-pressed print equipment and all that stuff. And we're talking the audio industry as well. A lot of audio people still use G4, G5.
Yeah.
So it is a valid point, but still, $300.
That's just insane.
Yeah.
It's still a little bit what they were smoking. I think it's about $250 more. You know.
That's assuming you really, really need one this week.
I love when people put this software in it as like the adds to the price. Unless you have the original software discs and the license agreement and the serial number, it ain't worth nothing.
No,
exactly. No. Basically, you can get all that stuff off of Macintosh Garden.
I don't even look at posts, whether it's Facebook or the groups or Marketplace or eBay. As soon as the title or the first paragraph mentions software, I stop reading because I know that the value is going to be too high based on software that you can get for free anywhere.
Yeah. So. Exactly. All right, guys. So we're just about to the end of the show here. So the last thing before we call it a night is our shameless self-promotion. So I'm going to throw it over to Mike first tonight.
I'm going to shove a Mac Pro in an industrial enclosure this weekend. What are you going to do?
Are you going to document this?
I don't know. I'm going to try. So
live stream it, baby.
That's right.
Okay. For guys who don't know, I'm a mechanic. Okay. So we got we have a state emissions here in Pennsylvania, at least in parts of Pennsylvania. So we got a new required emissions machine, which honestly is a piece of crap. And I'd rather go back to my old machine from 2004, but I digress. So my stepdad wanted to get rid of the old machine. I said, no, don't do that. It's got a great enclosure. I mean, this thing is built like a freaking tank. And it's got a standard case inside that fits a PC motherboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the guts of it out, and I'm going to try to see if I can retrofit one of my Mac Pros into the enclosure somehow.
You definitely got to live stream that, dude.
So that I can use it, because I use Macs at work. The only PC we have at work is the emissions machine, and it's a piece of shit. So, Windows 10. I'm going to try that and see if I can, totally destroy a Mac Pro case somehow. Which is already destroyed anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Sweet. Yep. Yeah, I want to see that.
Yep. All right, Steve, what you
got
going on?
I recently released a video, which I'm shamelessly plugging, and I'm going to paste the link in the chat now. And it was me unboxing a Macintosh Plus from 1987. So I picked that up a few months ago, and it was very minty and nice in the box and everything. And I did a stream where I unboxed it. So if you're into that sort of thing, it seems to be one of my most popular videos on YouTube so far. So thank you if anybody watched it already. So just shamelessly self-promoting it.
And how many
I had a lot of fun making
subscribers are you up to now?
And as of 2 days ago at least.
Yeah, I'm at like 802, so that blew me away. So thank you for everybody from the MacYak group and the chat and everybody showing me some love. So I appreciate it.
That is a very pretty machine.
Thank you. I will be doing a cool little giveaway when I reach 1,000. So I'm not announcing it yet.
5.1, 12 core?
No, nothing recent. Nothing. All right, it's not going to be heavy and it's going to be easy to ship. Let's just say that. So
he's going to give away one of those little freaking typewriter machines that he's been trying to give out.
No. I'll keep you guessing. It's nothing to look
the Alpha Smart keyboard.
Cool. It's really cool. It's nothing electronic. It's really cool, and it's signed by someone cooler than me. So I'll leave it
Don't
at
brag
that.
on it, okay? This is a one of a kind, printed by Mac 84 TV certificate.
Damn right. So yeah, that's my shameless self-promotion. If you want a certificate like Jay's, go to my Patreon, give me $1 and you get one. So, or no, a few bucks, whatever it is.
All right, Jay, how about you, man?
I still have to record the Xserve video update. As you can see, the Xserves are buried under a whole bunch of stuff. With next to it, even more stuff, and behind
Nice.
that, even more stuff. And I just keep piling on projects. I got a few MacBook Pros that I need to fix up. I just got a new logic board for my 2013 MacBook Pro that I want to fix up. And
I wouldn't say that's new.
so it's spent some time underwater. It doesn't matter. I'll fix it up. But yeah, the projects just keep piling on, and I still have my dad visiting, so I'm spending a lot of time with him. So I'm not getting a lot done. But come, I'd say, end of August, September, I'm really going to ramp up the video and the blog articles again.
Yep.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
And I guess I'm the last one here. I am going to be doing some more videos on ham radio on the Mac soon, so watch out for those on my channel. I've actually
pretty interesting, by the way, even though I don't do anything with ham radio.
Yeah. I watched the whole thing.
See?
I didn't understand half of it, but I watched it.
But it's pretty cool. But I'm going to do, my next one's going to be on some using handheld radios, programming software with the Mac. So
cool.
Look forward to that. I just got to find time to sit down and actually film it and edit it and then upload it. So.
And now, speaking for Greg Rutke, you might not see him for a while.
Well, he ain't been on here for a month. I think it's been a month now since we've seen him.
He's out of town. He's busy. He's doing something. His internet is down. So I don't know. He might vanish completely at some point. We don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah, he's saying that he has no internet at all, and he's buffering so bad that he can't even watch the stream tonight. So I don't know.
We need to send him some of our dial-up modems, right, Greg? And Mike.
There we go.
We can all chip in.
So,
hey, I got this.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say this modem I have for my ham radio is only 1,200 bauds. You know.
Hey, he could join us via ham radio. He calls on the radio. You pipe it in through Wirecast. We got solutions here.
Boy, you talking about buffering? He'll be buffering for a year.
That'd be awesome.
2025, he'll catch the first frame.
Yeah.
Oops. And if anyone currently in the chat or watching this later, if you have a cool project that you're recording or live streaming or blogging about, feel free to share it. Just hop on our Discord and share your links, and people can see it.
Yep. All right. And speaking of that, since we're almost at the end here, like and subscribe to this video, both the YouTube and the Facebook. We do have a Facebook group, so make sure you get on there. We do post information over there as well. Come and join us on Discord. The Discord link is up there right now, so you can probably see it. Go ahead, and we have voice channels and we have text channels. So go on there and check that out. Check out the description info and the links. We got all of our channel descriptions and links are down below. So just go down there and click on them. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Make sure you tell everybody, hey, how much screwed up our channel is, because we have technical difficulties every week. So
watch us panic.
Exactly. So anyways, guys, sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning of the show. I'm beginning to think it's a Wirecast issue now.
Oh yeah, here we go again.
I think it's a Wirecast issue.
Somewhere else.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Right.
So anyways, guys, we're going to go ahead and call this a night, and we will see you guys later. Have a good one.
See ya.
See ya.